Hey everyone, welcome to our SurrealDB stream around Maintainer Month. With me, I'm really honored to have a lot of our community maintainers for the different SDKs where you might be using SurrealDB on the screen. To introduce Maintainer Month to you, it's one of GitHub's initiatives to really celebrate those community maintainers that are taking care of these open source projects. A lot of us are using open source code and software all over the world without really knowing who are the developers responsible for maintaining the projects behind it. And today we want to show you who are the community maintainers for some of the SDKs that we use at SurrealDB. So to kick it off, my name is Naira Hussain, and I lead the developer relations team here at SurrealDB. And I have my colleague Alexander, who's our data evangelist at SurrealDB as well. So perhaps we could do a quick round of introductions. Let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do, and which language SDK you maintain. And then we'll go into the different questions. So perhaps, Alex, we can start with you and then go through the different maintainers.
Let's just start with Ege.
Okay then. I'm Ege. I'm a maintainer of the Go library. I'm also in Turkey. I'm also studying, basically. So that's it. Thank you.
So next up, who do we have? Perhaps David?
So I'm David.
David,
I'm from France. Yeah. So I'm from France, like I said, and I'm the maintainer of the .NET SDK. So yeah.
Maybe Khalid next?
Hello, everyone. I am Khalid from Saudi Arabia. I maintain the Java SDK. Nice to meet you all.
So maybe Bo?
Hello, my name is Bo. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm the PHP SDK maintainer.
Alex?
Yep. So as Naira mentioned, I'm Alexander, doing a bunch of stuff, including education, as well as contributing many places, including the Python SDK.
Thank you so much. So I hope that gives our audience a quick introduction of where our maintainers are based, and as well as Alex and myself from the developer relations team here at SurrealDB. So to start off, could each of you tell us a bit about your background, how you first got into programming and open source specifically? So perhaps we can start with David first.
Yeah. So I started a long time ago. Yes. I started with WAMP, as far as I remember. So playing with MySQL essentially. So trying to create table, manipulating data, and trying to do something with it, and displaying some basic HTML from the data. So as far as I remember, that was the first encounter with software development and of course databases. And when I first got into open source, my primary motivation was to share some projects, some works I was doing. So it started, of course, with some .NET projects, some C# projects, and then going further, I started to move onto the JavaScript and then TypeScript ecosystem. So I continued sharing works and started to contribute to project when I could. So that's pretty much all I'm trying. And now, of course, I'm working on the .NET SDK for SurrealDB.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, can we go to you?
Of course. I started programming around 14 with the C++. I was doing some debugging and kind of stuff with games, basically. And when I started, I was already familiar with the open source because of the Linux. I was a long time user of the Linux and GNU and all kind of stuff, basically. And basically, yeah, like this is it, to be honest. That's all.
Got it. And I understand this is your first big open source project that you're
Yes,
contributing to.
yes.
So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah. I forgot to mention. Sorry about that.
That's cool. Khalid, can we move on to you?
Yeah, I remember I started first year at high school. Started with PHP and MySQL because that was the most popular stack back then. Then moved to mobile development with Java for Android. That was my first time with Java. I needed at that time to send notifications or messages from the server, which was PHP, to my mobile application. I had to integrate with the Firebase FCM. After I got it to work, I figured why not make it a library and share it with everybody. So I made it a library. That was around 9 years ago. 9 years ago, yeah. Later, I continued to contribute to some projects there and there.
Really interesting. So right from your beginning of trying to program, you already found a need for another tool and you were able to contribute back another library. That's great, Khaled. And Bo, how about you?
I started programming when I was 14 years old in .NET. So my first personal project was actually creating a hardware spoofer and also a Wi-Fi discovery application. And further on, I actually created Microsoft DOS, at least not 100%, but like a tiny bit. And then I moved to other languages like PHP, JavaScript, even C sometimes. And yeah. And then also the reason why I went in, or like the first time that I went into open source was a few years ago, I think 2 years ago. I didn't really created something. It was more like fixes of certain libraries that I used. And now I created something pretty large, which I'm obviously proud of. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear kind of like how each of you got into open source. And at SurrealDB, we've been incredibly grateful for the work you've been doing and kind of like driving the SDKs and kind of like making it more accessible to wider amount of people. Because our team is relatively small and don't have all the kind of knowledge of all the languages. So it's been amazing. But on kind of like the topic of what actually led you to discover SurrealDB and what made you specifically want to contribute your SDK. So I guess I'll start with you, David. And just to kind of reiterate, David has done amazing work, both developing the SDK and answering the community in many other ways. So David, how did you discover SurrealDB and kind of what led you to contribute the SDK?
Yes, so first time I heard of it was through the Fireship YouTube video back then. I don't remember when, but I think it's a long time ago from now. I suppose. I mean, it's relative, but so from that video, I was very curious about what it can offer because you know there's a lot of database out there. I mean, more and more every day. And I was very curious about the query language. That was really intriguing to see how you could get from the standard SQL to a new kind of SQL that was really really distinct from any other query language. So that piqued my curiosity first, and then indeed I remember there was some of unofficial project, an official SDK for .NET. So I got intrigued also about what other developers were trying to achieve. So I could see some potential, and I could see also some kind of there's something in the first library, there's something else on the second library, there's some missing pieces, and the effort of continuity and adding features like the live queries that came a little later. So it was more trying to put everything in a single place and trying to make the simplest thing, and of course publishing an official library for other .NET developers to try.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear. Again, really, really appreciate it. It's been great to kind of like have those contributions. So let's move on to Ege, who contributed the Go SDK. How did you hear about SurrealDB, and kind of like what inspired you to kind of dig into contributing?
It's kind of same, to be honest. Like I discovered the Fireship video and get into the SurrealDB. About the contribution side, I started using the Go driver because it was a Go driver out back then, and it was like a lot of missing pieces, and it was janky, to be honest. And I see like how could I improve it for my personal use in first. And when I start like doing it, I said like, why not publish with all the people that use the SurrealDB? So that's why I contributed in the first place. And the same thing right now is, to be honest, like I usually do it myself first and contribute to the main repo afterwards.
Nice. So kind of like solving, like interested in a database and kind of like solving a problem, and kind of like helping others, kind of like sharing those solutions that you've developed for yourself. That's very cool. Very, very appreciative. So yeah, just to mention, like he's done more PRs than like anybody in the Go repository, and it's great. So Khaled, you've been working on the Java SDK. Like, how did you discover SurrealDB, and kind of like what inspired you to contribute?
Yes, I believe, like my other colleagues here, I discovered SurrealDB through a YouTube video also. And when I saw the repository, I saw that query language. It was interesting because at that time I was working on a project, and I had to write a lot of reports and join conditions, join multiple tables. It was a nightmare for huge data sets. And the query language allowed to like a kind of object-oriented way of writing queries. I liked that very, very much. So I went and tried to see the Java driver, and there wasn't no driver for Java. So I started writing the driver.
No, it's really good, and kind of like all of those are really appreciated because yeah, there are so many ways you can use SurrealDB and so many different languages we want to support. And it literally wouldn't be able, like we wouldn't be able to support them if it weren't for all of your efforts. So that's great. So let's move on to Bo, who has been working on the PHP one. How did you hear about SurrealDB, and what inspired you to contribute?
Yeah, so I came first across via the Fireship YouTube video, and also further researching. And first that stood out was obviously the query language. And it was, I think when I discovered it, or like used it, was around I think the beta version, literally the first one. And it was very promising. And we actually built projects at my work. And yeah, so that was the main reason that I came across. And then the reason why I contributed, since I saw at the time that I was looking for a project that I could work on, so that the PHP drive at the time wasn't maintained anymore. So I was like, well, that could be an opportunity for me to learn how SDKs work, because for me it was still like quite exploratory, if I can call. and I've learned a lot from it. And one of the challenges was that in PHP there's not many good CBOR libraries out there. So even next to making SDK, I also had to make a CBOR library. So it has been integrated and it works well.
Yeah, no, it's great to kind of like see also kind of like not just expanding SerilDB, but like expanding the wider ecosystem.
That's
I can
right.
definitely hear some kind of like common themes emerging, like Fireship Video, which also was the first time I heard of it, and you can hear about like basically needing something for yourself and sharing it with others, which is kind of like the ethos of open source, right? You kind of like want to help others have an easier time than you had yourself. So that's, yeah, again, just really appreciate all the help and contributions there. So I'll hand it off to Naira, who will continue this discussion.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing your experience in these different ecosystems. I want to ask, as someone who's deeply involved in the language ecosystem of your choice, so like David for .NET, Ege for Go, Khaled for Java, and Bo for PHP, what excites you about the language and its potential for growth, particularly in the context of SerilDB? So David, can we start with you?
Yes, .NET ecosystem, for those who know .NET, it's a very large ecosystem. I mean, it is there from a very long time. My goal mostly is to push your vision to make the best SDK possible. So there's a lot of work to do. And I could see that that way of integrating SerilDB inside a .NET SDK is first to support C# because it's the main language. Maybe in the long term, it's to support every language in the ecosystem. So the vision is to make iteration to make it better on every iteration, to support every feature of SerilDB. It's a lot of feature, and being able to write query as simple as you could write query with SerilQL. So the main goal will be that, but there's a lot of goals to achieve on a .NET SDK. So that will be the main goal, and trying to make the simplest SDK possible, always.
Thanks, David. I'm sure you have a really challenging job doing this for the .NET ecosystem. Ege, could you tell us about Go?
Yeah, of course. As we all know, Go is like all philosophy is make it simple, and it is very simple, to be honest. Like there was a like Python and kind of stuff, but it's have a concurrency model for the like backends, and it also suits for SerilDB for the channels and kind of stuff. And I think like in the future it will be like mostly used for the backends and kind of stuff, and SerilDB is like suits for that, to be honest. Like most backend languages, backend servers in the database in them, so it is the best feature, to be honest, I think.
Khaled, about Java
Yeah.
and SerilDB?
Sure. Java is powerful. It's a robust language. It's everywhere, from mobile applications to games, like Minecraft, I believe, is written in Java, to the most expensive and powerful enterprise applications. Especially with the recent versions of Java with the virtual threads, which allows a more lightweight concurrency model. It's great to have that in the driver as well. So inshallah, we'll put that in the driver to use virtual threads.
Really nice. Yeah, I know it's been quite challenging maintaining the Java SDK, but you've been doing a great job so far, Khaled. Bo, how about you and PHP?
PHP has been relying on databases, and it's basically the main drive that still powers PHP till this day. And yeah, SerialDB could play a big role within the in the PHP ecosystem. Like PHP does have a lot of integration with SQL databases such as MySQL, MariaDB, and also Postgres, and maybe others as well. And I think SerialDB could fit quite nicely next to those databases as well. Yeah.
It's really encouraging to see the developer community using your SDKs to integrate with these different ecosystems.
That's right.
Alex?
Yeah, I think one thing that I find really interesting to learn as well is about what are kind of like the challenges and like the interesting things you've learned in your kind of like journey of creating this, and kind of like what could be better. So for those kind of like watching this stream, and for those maybe who would like to contribute as well to maybe the SDK that you're working on, or an SDK for another language, what are kind of the kind of interesting things that you can learn, and what are some of the more challenging things that you've experienced? So let's start with David. What has been your experience of integrating with the .NET ecosystem?
Yeah, I think now the SerialDB is growing bigger and bigger every day. So at first it was a little easier, but the goal is to be able to use every basic feature. You know, there's the core SDK where you can select stuff, you can insert, create stuff, you can do the simple stuff. I mean, you are even more features than that with the upset, the merge, and the page methods. So there are a lot of basic feature. I mean, it's not that much complicated, I suppose, but you have to get started there. I suppose that could be a good starting point. Handling the primitives, you know, null, none values, numbers, strings, etc. So you have to integrate that into your own language. So I suppose it could be a little more difficult on some languages. So yeah, I mean, those kind of basic stuff, I mean, that could create a foundation for you to have a really good starting point for an SDK. I mean, whatever the language you are working on.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Yep. Yeah.
And how can it like go? What would improve your experience of contributing?
Yeah. The one thing I can remember is trying to figure out things from the REST SDK. I mean, the main repository where you have the CLI, the WebSocket and HTTP handlers, and of course all the statements you have in the core SDK. You know, it's in SerialDB-core. So everything is right here. It's a little bit better if you know Rust, but yeah, everything is there to be discovered. So yeah, it can be read. It can take time, but the more you see, the more you are able to know where to look at. So I would say going through the Rust code of the main repository is also a good starting point.
No, I hear what you mean. So with Egi, how has your experience been with Go? Has there been like developing the library? What has kind of been like the main learning points and challenges that you've had?
In the beginning of the Go driver, it was like more like a rug. You can't expand anywhere. Like you can't put any WebSockets and other stuff. Like we usually like do more flexible in Go, and we just do that in SerialDB as well. we like edit interfaces and kind of stuff that can be edited like easily, and like almost all packages we use is more modular right now. And basically, like the turning point was the WebSocket driver. I think like we just almost refactored all and rewrite it, and it's working right now. Like it's great, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it's really good. It's been kind of interesting to see the journey of that as well. So for Khaled, what's your experience been contributing with the Java SDK, and what has kind of been some learning points and challenges?
Yeah, it was great. There was also other contributors pushing PRs and working to fix bugs. It was awesome experience. One area of a challenge that I faced was to implement some of the features that weren't fully implemented at that time. I remember I was working on implementing the live queries feature. I had to dig into the Rust code to understand how it works, and at the end, I figured I got I think from Toby or something. He said that feature is not fully implemented yet, so I just stopped that at that time.
Yeah. No, I can imagine there have been quite a few things that like features coming. They're available in Rust, but not available here, and all these kinds of things. So I can imagine it can be a little bit confusing. So yeah, I'm like really appreciate that like all of you have kind of like been with us for some time, and kind of like with all these developments, and kind of it's really great. So for Bo with PHP, you mentioned something about CBOR as well. Like, what has been your kind of like learning experiences and challenges there?
Well, first off, it was like making the SDK. So I wanted to have it close as possible with the JavaScript SDK. So people that know PHP and JavaScript can hop on like the PHP SDK quite easily. So that was the first thing that I want to aim. And then indeed, some of the roadblocks were indeed CBOR. So there are CBOR libraries out there that are doing its job, but some were not like fully like integrated. So it didn't really follow the specs, and some were missing kind of features like the custom tags. And one was also very difficult to work with. So I was like, just make the CBOR library myself then. And it took some time actually to make it work, but on the end, obviously, it was a fun experience to do so.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, it's always good to be able to kind of like learn some new things, and being able to kind of like see like that thing, the challenges that you have are not insurmountable, like with like effort and help. Like literally anything in computer science and programming, as long as it not breaking the laws of physics, eventually can be solved. So it's kind of like great to see how each of you have kind of like solved different challenges and in different ways. And apologize if some people found it way too difficult to read Rust code. we're definitely working on helping kind of like make it more accessible. But yeah, it's great that when you kind of been able to write those SDKs, that you've been open to doing other things like the CBOR, like reading Rust and so forth. So I'd like to hand it over to Naira now to continue.
Sure. So thank you so much for giving us all this insight into what it's like day to day to maintain these different SDKs. I want to bring it back to the theme of Maintain a Month and go beyond the technical aspect to understand what keeps you motivated about open source development. So how do you envision the future of open source? Because I know there's a lot of things in the news at the moment about what's happening with different open source projects. And what role do you hope to play in this future? David, can we start with you?
That's a tough question. I suppose continuing the work on current project. I mean, I'm working on different projects, but I'm trying to achieve the more difficult task on the SerialDB .NET library. So it's trying to reach a point where I could have everything. I mean, pretty much everything already settled, so I can work on smaller tasks, and I could eventually make stuff for other developers to go and work on the project easier than it is today. So I suppose it's about trying to simplify the architecture or making it more modular for other people to go there. So I suppose it could be a general rule for any project.
Of course, so you're sort of removing the complexity and making it a lot easier for new developers to work with the in the .NET ecosystem and make it a bit more modular for them. Nice one, David. Ige, how about you and Go?
Yeah, like about like the beyond the technical aspects, like the open source in general, like we are gonna pass away, like in some time, maybe like long away, but you know, like the things we done will be last forever. Like we can be gone, but not the things we done, not the things we like we help to humanity. But like I am now like I understand that the things done is not maybe not important to humanity right now, but maybe like in later it can be more valuable than we think, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess that really resonates with me and hopefully the audience as well. Like having something that you're leaving behind or something that's going to make developers' lives easier as well once you've moved on from this project. Khaled, how about you and Go? You and Java, what keeps you passionate about the open source ecosystem and what's the role you see in the open source future?
Yes, honestly, just the collaborative spirit, sense of community, working with different people from around the globe is truly rewarding. Yes, open source, I believe, will stay here, and it will not go away. A lot of big projects like the Linux kernel, a lot of other projects are relying on open source. So open source is here to stay. Yes.
Big one for me as well. Working at a company like SerialDB and taking care of massive open source projects, you really get to see like thousands of people coming together to contribute to one library, which is super cool. Bo, for PHP?
Yeah, so so one of the main reasons that keeps me motivated is basically creating something for others to use for their own projects. So obviously keep it very simple for them to use. So that is one of the main reasons. And then also interacting with the community, learning from others, and also teaching others as well. So that is one of the few things that keeps me motivated to contribute.
Yeah, that's really useful. Like I also find it's easy to stay at the top of your game, like your skill level, when you're able to contribute back and teach others in the community as well. That's really great. It's been a pleasure to have all of you on the stream with us today. And I'd like to thank each of you for your contributions to maintaining the different SDKs. I'm going to work with our events team to make sure that all of you get a SerialDB hoodie at the end of this event. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be sending you all emails. And to close this event, I want to invite all the attendees to attend our next developer office hours. So that will happen on the 7th of June, and the focus is on interactive examples. So I'm going to put the link for you in the chat. And lastly, be aware that we're going to have Toby has Ask Me Anything events happening all the time on Discord. So you can, of course, come in there and ask any questions that you may have as a contributor, as a community member, or even a maintainer. Thanks again for everyone joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.